Fire at a Feodosia oil base in Crimea has been raging for over a day and a half after Ukrainian drone attack on Monday. Videos and photos circulated in social media show the fire and thick smoke over the port city of Feodosia in Russian-annexed Crimea Peninsula. According to social media reports, the smell of burning is noticeable even 10 kilometers from the site, as toxic smoke continues to spread over the city. The smoke is visible in Stary Krim. An overnight Ukrainian drone attack on Crimea caused a fire to erupt at a major oil depot on early Monday. According to Telegram channels, about 830 people have been evacuated from Feodosia and are now in temporary accommodation centers due to the attack. Russia's Emergency Situations Ministry reported that as a result of the strike, 11 tanks were damaged, 8 with diesel fuel, 2 with gasoline, and 1 empty. Monday's attack was the second strike on the Feodosia oil depot this month. Crime's Russian-installed head Sergei Aksionov confirmed that a drone hit the oil depot in Feodosia. Located around 250 kilometers from the Ukrainian front line, the Feodosia oil terminal is Crimea's largest oil storage and transshipment hub with a capacity of up to 250,000 tons. It was set ablaze in early October following a drone attack. Ukraine's relentless attacks on Russian energy infrastructure have plunged Russia into deep energy crisis. Last week, Commander-in-Chief of Ukrainian Armed Forces claimed that its forces had reduced Russia's oil processing capacity by 21%. The fuel crisis in Russia continues to escalate, with gasoline supply disruptions reported in more than 50 regions. The situation is most acute in the Far East and occupied Crimea, according to the BBC Russian service. Gasoline supply problems in Russia first emerged in August in Transbaikal, Primorsk, and Sakhalin. Now, according to BBC estimates, supply shortages are occurring in more than half of the regions, including the central and southern regions. As a result of strikes by Ukrainian drones on Russian oil refineries, fuel supply problems have arisen in at least 57 regions of the country. Meanwhile, in occupied Crimea, the fuel situation is so critical that the occupiers have been forced to impose limits on fuel sales, as the peninsula does not have its own refineries and is entirely dependent on supplies. In Moscow and the largest cities, there is no widespread shortage yet, but there are interruptions in the supply of certain brands of fuel. The situation in the capital is considered exceptional. The city receives gasoline from 5 oil refineries at once, while most regions receive it from only 1 or 2. The further away from Moscow, the more pronounced the problems become, the publication states. According to Rostat, gasoline prices at gas stations have risen by more than 10% since the beginning of the year, and wholesale prices have reached historic highs. Since the beginning of the year, Ukrainian drones have hit 21 of Russia's 38 major oil refineries, 48% more than in the entire previous year. Justin Crump, a former British Army officer and head of the consulting firm Sibylline, notes that Kiev is deliberately focusing on attacks on the oil industry, seeing this as an effective way to put pressure on Moscow. The Moscow Times also reported that attacks have affected 1 in 3 oil refineries in Russia. There were 14 attacks in August alone, 8 in September, and 4 in the first 10 days of October. Russia is ramping up production of its T-90 tanks and restoring its pre-war reserves, signaling it may be preparing to pose a long-term military threat to NATO, analysts at the Institute for the Study of War said in an assessment. According to the open-source intelligence group Frontelligence Insight, internal documents from Russia's main tank producer, Eurovagonzavod, reveal plans to increase T-90 tank production by 80% by 2028 compared to 2024 levels. The factory also intends to launch production of a new variant, the T-90M2. Analysts estimate that from 2026 to 2036, UVZ will upgrade more than 2,000 tanks, including T-90M, T-90M2, and T-72B3M models. Combined with the tanks built during 2024 to 2025, that volume would be enough to fully restore Russia's armored fleet in preparation for a potential future large-scale war. Open-source data also shows that Russia is increasing repairs of T-72 tanks. At the same time, ISW notes a sharp decline in the use of tanks on the battlefield, suggesting Moscow may be stockpiling armored vehicles and preparing to modernize its reserves, both for continued operations in Ukraine and for a potential confrontation with NATO. ISW warns that Russia could pose a significant threat to the alliance well before 2036, even without fully rebuilding its tank arsenal. Despite suffering heavy losses in Ukraine, the Russian military retains the ability to regenerate manpower, the assessment said. According to ISW, Russia will likely maintain substantial combat power for several months after active fighting in Ukraine ends, allowing it to rapidly shift forces to NATO's eastern flank. Russian military planners are also developing new concepts of operations and battlefield tactics that enable large-scale combat without relying heavily on tanks or armored vehicles. Simultaneously, Moscow is working on methods to deny an adversary the ability to use its own armored forces effectively at scale. Additionally, experts say Russian forces are learning how to strike enemy rear areas and disrupt logistics from the air without needing full air superiority. This approach allows them to achieve the effect of aerial interception without establishing outright dominance in the skies. Still, ISW said there is no indication that Russia's military leadership plans to wait for a full rebuild before escalating attacks against NATO member states. On the contrary, it may act sooner if the alliance fails to maintain adequate deterrence.